How are you guys doing? Today is Sunday, February 20th, 2022. I'm James Sims, and for this episode of The Elite, I'm going to do a GOAT profile, one of the greatest of all time, for Justin Verlander, the starting pitcher of the Houston Astros. He turns 39 today, and my intention with this episode is, of course, to zoom in, give an individual profile for one of the greatest pitchers that has ever really played the game. In the 100 plus years of the MLB, we very rarely seen a player that has won an MVP at the pitching position, let alone had 300 strikeout seasons, and has been able to do as much in a career as Justin Verlander has. Not to even mention that he's literally about to enter his 40s and he's still one of the best baseball players alive, especially when you have a lot of people that are competing for the same finite spots on 30 teams in the MLB. To be consistently regarded as an ace, especially this late in your career, I think is a very special thing. And I do think it's worth recognizing that Justin Verlander is not only an elite pitcher, but he is one of the greatest pitchers to ever pitch and ever play the game. So, to give you a little bit of background, he's originally from Virginia. He's a right-handed pitcher with command. Of course, he throws the ball incredibly hard, but of course, he just knows how to command the plate in a way that not many pitchers have. There's a legitimate reason that he's been able to pitch this good for so long, and I do think that he's one of the best pitchers that I have at least seen in my lifetime. He's a pitcher that, I'm going to miss when he's no longer pitching in baseball. But without further ado, I'm going to get into Justin Verlander's career. The World Series champion, like I said, is originally from Virginia. Coming out of high school, he would go on to play at Old Dominion. After, of course, at high school, his pitch wasn't fast enough to really come straight out and join the league. He would go on to pitch for the U.S. at the Pan American Games in 2003 while he was in college, by the way. He would go on to be taken with the Detroit Tigers with the second overall pick in the 2004 MLB draft, just to get a sense of how long ago he was drafted. And just to get a sense, Gio Gonzalez is the only person from his first round that I can actually recognize, that I can remember. Dustin Pedroia was taken in the second round of this draft, as was Kurt Suzuki. And even Hunter Pence were even taken to get a sense of the players that came in when Justin Verlander did. Justin Verlander, however, would make his MLB debut in his age 22 season in 2005, after he was already drafted in 2004, so it wouldn't take him that long to make it to the MLB. His debut season would be his age 22 season in 2005. He will go on to start 2 games for a Detroit Tigers team that will go on to finish with a 71-91 record. Going into his very first season, the last time that the Tigers had made the playoffs was 1987. So this was a long drought of the Tigers just simply not doing what was necessarily needed of them. Almost a 2-decade-long drought of not making the playoffs. In his very first season, he would go on to pitch only 11 innings, as he would allow 9 earned runs in those 11 innings. He would allow 15 hits, which is 4 more hits than innings pitched, and he would strike out 7. That's 7 less strikeouts than innings pitched, as the Tigers wouldn't really go anywhere. His official rookie season would be his age 23 season in 2006. He would go on to start 30 games in a season where the Detroit Tigers would finish with a 95-67 record. In his rookie season, the Tigers would make the playoffs for the very first time since 1987, cementing what would be a 2-year, making it the 20th year without making the playoffs, that they would actually make the playoffs for them. And this would also be the season in which Jim Leland would be named the manager of the year. Verlander's rookie season, he would finish with a 17-9 record in those 30 starts, as he would finish with a 3.63 ERA. He would be named the Rookie of the Year that year, despite not being named an All-Star. He would be named 7th in Cy Young voting in a season which would eventually see Johan Santana of the Minnesota Twins take home the Cy Young Award. But in this season, in the 186 innings he would pitch, he would allow 100 187 hits, so he only allowed one more hit than innings pitched, and he would strike out 124 batters on the year, which is 62 less strikeouts than innings pitched on the year. However, in that 2006 season, he would go on to be named the American League Rookie of the Year, as the Tigers would make the playoffs. Once they made the playoffs, they would end up beating the Yankees in 4 to make it to the ALCS. Once they made it to the championship series, they would end up sweeping the Athletics, and once they made it to the World Series, they would end up losing in the World Series to the St. Louis Cardinals. So that would be, of course, when they had won it. Taking a look at, this would be the 10th time that the St. Louis Cardinals had won the World Series. So this would transition into Justin Verlander's second full season as a starting pitcher for the Tigers. In his age 24 season in 2007, he will go on to start all 32 of the matchups he pitched in a season where the Tigers would miss the playoffs with an 88-74 record. They had 7 less wins than the year prior. However, Verlander would be named an all-star for the very first year in his career. He would finish with an 18-6 record, yet another winning season. He had a 3.66 ERA, which was on par with what he had done the year before. This would be the very first season he would pitch for over 200 innings, as he pitched for 201.2. He allowed 181 hits, as he had 20 less hits than innings pitched. The first season he'd have less hits than innings pitched. He would strike out 183 batters, which is 18 less strikeouts than innings pitched. He would also go on to lead the American League in times he would hit a batter. He hit 19 batters on the year. This will be the only season in which he led the American League in that statistical category. He also led the American League in wild pitches, as he threw about 17 of them. In addition to being named an All-Star, he would be fifth in an American League Cy Young race, where he would lose to CC Sabathia of the Cleveland Indians at the time. But that would be just his second full season as a starter, as the Detroit Tigers completely missed the playoffs. Transitioning into his third season with the Detroit Tigers, which would probably go down as his worst statistical season, his age 25 season would be in 2008, where he would start all 33 of the games he played in a season where the Tigers finished with a 74-88 record. They won 14 less games than they had in Justin Verlander's first All-Star season. Verlander would finish with an 11-17 record. This would be the lone year in his career he would lead the American League in losses. He's one of the few pitchers to have to lead in that statistical category as well. In the 33 games he played and the 201 innings he pitched, he would finish with a 4.84 ERA, which to this date is the highest ERA that he's ever posted in a full season outside of his debut year. In the 201 innings he pitched, he allowed 195 hits, which is 6 less hits than innings pitched. He would strike out 163 batters, which of course is 38 less strikeouts than innings pitched on the year. And the Tigers would finish that year not even making the playoffs, as Justin Verlander wouldn't even be named an All-Star that year. That would all change going into his fourth full season with the Detroit Tigers. His age 26 season in 2009 would see him start all 35 of the games he played in a season where the Tigers would finish with an 86-77 record. They had won 12 more games than the previous year, but they had missed the playoffs for the third year in a row. In 2009, just his fourth season of being a starter, Justin Verlander would be named an All-Star for the second time in that span. He would finish with a 19-9 record as he went on to lead the American League in wins the year after he led the American League in losses. Alongside his 3.45 ERA, he would go on to lead the American League in innings pitched for the very first time in his career. He threw for 240 innings. In those 240 innings, he would allow 219 hits, which is 21 less hits than innings pitched. He would strike out an American League high 269 batters. This would be the first time he led the American League in strikeouts as well. He led the league in wins, innings pitched, and strikeouts on the year. His 269 strikeouts at that point were a career high, and the first time he threw for over 200. It'll be the first time in his career he had more strikeouts than innings pitched, that being his fourth full season as a starter. He also led the American League in batters faced, as he almost faced 1,000 batters on the year. He also led the American League in strikeouts per 9 innings. This would be the only year in which he would lead the American League in that statistical category. And in addition to being named an All-Star for the second time in his first 4 years, he would go on to finish third in American Cy Young voting in a season where Zach Greinke would win the award for the Kansas City Royals. But you get a sense of how good Justin Verlander was, and that was all the way back in 2009. So this would transition into his 5th full season with the Detroit Tigers. In his age 27 season in 2010, Justin Verlander would go on to start all 33 of the games he pitched in a season where the Tigers finished with an 81-81 record. They had won 5 less games than the previous year, and this year they had failed to make the playoffs for the 4th year in a row. In that season, however, Verlander would be able to make the All-Star team for the 3rd season in his first 5 years of being a starter. In the 33 games he played, he would finish with an 18-9 record. This would be the 4th time in his first 5 seasons in which he'd finish with at least 15 wins, at least 17 wins on the year, alongside a single-digit amount of losses. He would finish with a 3.37 ERA, which at that point was the lowest ERA he had put together as a starter. In the 224 innings he pitched, he allowed 190 innings, which is 24 less, which is 34 less hits than innings pitched on the year. He would go on to strike out 219 batters. This would be the 2nd year in a row he would throw at least 200 strikeouts, and he would finish with 5 less strikeouts than innings pitched on the year. And he would be, in addition to being named an All-Star, like I said, the Tigers would just miss out on the playoffs, but this would lead into quite arguably his best pitching season. And even going into that season, he was already a 3-time All-Star that many people were aware of was one of the best pitchers in baseball. But he would, of course, make that jump into being a Cy Young player in his 6th season as a starter in his age 28 season in 2011. In 2011, he would start all 34 of the games he played in a season where the Tigers would finish with a 95-67 record, leading the American Central. This would be the first time they had finished with the best record in the American League Central since they had joined the division, and this would be the first time they had won their division since 1987. So, of course, this was a very big season for them. As in this 2011 season, Justin Verlander would go on to finish with a 24-5 record, leading the American League in wins for the 2nd time in his career, in addition to leading the American League in games started. The last time he had led the league in games started, he led the league in wins, which was 2009. He would go on to lead the American League in win-loss percentage. His 24-5 record was the best record. He would finish with a 2.40 ERA, which would be the only time in his MLB career he's led the American League in earned run average in the 251 innings that he pitched, which to this day is the most innings that he's ever pitched in a season. He would go on to allow 174 hits, which is 77 less hits than innings pitched, at least until that point. He would throw 250 strikeouts, which is 1 less strikeout than innings pitched for that year. This would be the 3rd season in a row he had thrown at least 200 strikeouts, and the 2nd time in a 3-year span he had thrown at least 250. And if we're looking at how his ERA plus measured out, which is his ERA compared to the average pitcher, his ERA plus was 172, leading the American League. This would be the first time he had done so, meaning that his ERA was literally 72 percentage points better than the average ERA in baseball. He would lead the league in walks/hits per innings pitched with .92 on the year. He also led the league in hits per 9 innings pitched, as his 6.2 would be the very first time he would lead the American League. In 2011, in his 6th year of being an All-Star, or in his 6th year of being a starter at the pitching position as being a starting pitcher. He would be named an All-Star for the third year in a row and for the fourth time in a 5-year span. He would go on to be named the Cy Young in the American League for the very first time in his career, and he would be named the MVP in the American League. That is 2011 is the only year in which Justin Verlander has won a season MVP, especially at the pitching position, considering how hard it is, considering there's 162 games in a season and he pitched 34 of them, saying that he missed 128 games and still won the MVP is a very impressive feat to really grasp. And once the Tigers would make the playoffs, they would end up beating the Yankees in the American League Division Series before they lost in the ALCS. And not to mention that winning the Triple Crown this would be the only time that Justin Verlander, I believe, has won the Triple Crown at that position. Transitioning into his seventh full season with the Detroit Tigers as a starter. In his age 29 season in 2012, he would start all 33 of the matchups he played in a season where the Tigers would finish with an 88-74 record. They would win the American League Central for the second year in a row, and they would make the playoffs yet again. This would be the season in which Miguel Cabrera would achieve the offensive Triple Crown and then be named the MVP after he led the league in batting average, home runs, and RBIs. In this season, Justin Verlander would finish with a 17-8 record as he finished with yet another winning season. He would be named an All-Star for the fourth year in a row and in the fifth time in a 6-year stretch. He finished with a 2.64 ERA, making it the second year in a row he's had an ERA below 3 as a starting pitcher. He would go on to lead the American League in complete games as he had 6 of them. He has not thrown that many in a season since 2012. He would go on to lead the American League in innings pitched for the third time in a 4-year stretch. He threw for 238 innings. This would be the sixth season in a row he'd throw for at least 200 innings. In those 238 innings, he would allow 192 hits on the year. And it all comes out to being 46 more innings pitched than hits allowed. This would go on to be the 5th year in a row in which Justin Verlander would allow less hits than innings pitched. This would actually be the 6th year in a row that he would do that. He would finish with 239 strikeouts, as he would have more strikeouts than innings pitched. This would be the second time in his career as a starter in which he would do so. He would lead the American League in batters faced for the second time in his career. He has not led the American League in batters faced since 2012. He would go on to lead the American League in ERA plus for the last time as well, as his 161 ERA would not be the highest of his career, but of course this would be the last time he led the American League. And at the conclusion of the 2012 season, after being named an All-Star yet again, he would be the runner-up in the Cy Young voting this year, as the Cy Young in the American League was given to David Price of the Tampa Bay Rays, as Verlander lost by just about 4 points in that race. He would also finish in the top 10 in AL MVP voting, as, like I said, Miguel Cabrera would go on to take home the MVP this year. And after the Tigers finished the year with one of the top 10 players on offense and defense, they would go on to lead the Tigers into the playoffs. And once they made it into the first round, they would beat the Athletics in the AL Division Series. They would sweep the Yankees in the American League Championship Series to make it to the World Series versus the Giants. Once they would face off against the Giants, this would be the series where the Giants would win their second in a 3-year span. The Giants had won 3 in a 5-year span. This was their second in the middle, where Bruce Bochy was their manager. And that is the last time that the Detroit Tigers have actually been all the way to the World Series. Was all the way back then. All the way back when Justin Verlander was the runner-up in MVP voting. This, of course, would transition into Justin's 8th season with the Detroit Tigers and his age 30 season in 2013. In that season, he would start all 34 of the games he played for a Detroit Tigers team that would finish with a 93-69 record. They had won the American League Central for the third year in a row, and they had clinched the playoffs yet again. This would be the year where Miguel Cabrera had won his second MVP in a row, and this would be the year where Max Scherzer had won the Cy Young while being a member of the Detroit Tigers as well. In that season where Justin Verlander would lead the American League in games started for the third time in a 5-year stretch, he would finish with a 13-12 record and a 3.46 ERA. After finishing with a double-digit amount of wins and a double-digit amount, this would be the first time he finished with a double-digit amount of losses since he led the American League in losses back in 2008. He would be named an all-star, like I said, for the 5th year in a row. He would pitch for 218 innings. This would go on to be the 7th year in a row he would pitch for at least 200 innings. He would allow 212 hits, which is 6 less hits than innings pitched. He would throw 217 strikeouts, which is 1 less strikeout than inning pitched. But this would be the 5th year in a row in which he would throw for at least 200 strikeouts, which is a very tough feat for any pitcher to really throw for at any time. Once this season came to a close and he was named an all-star for the 6th time in a 7-year stretch, the Tigers would go on to beat the Athletics in the American League Division Series in the playoffs before losing in the American League Championship Series to the Red Sox, as the Red Sox went all the way to the World Series after and went on to beat the St. Louis Cardinals that year for their 8th title. This would, of course, lead to Justin Verlander's 9th season with the Detroit Tigers as a full-time starter. In his age 31 season in 2014, he would start all 32 of the matchups he played in a season where the Tigers would win the American League Central for the 4th year in a row. They finished with a 90-72 record on the season. In that year, Justin Verlander would miss the All-Star game for the first time since 2008, where he led the American League in losses. He finished with a 15-12 record alongside a 4.54 ERA. His 4.54 ERA was the highest it had been since his 11-17 season in 2008. He would pitch for 206 innings. This would, of course, be the 8th season in a row that he would throw for at least 200 innings. Very tough feat to do so at a consistent level. He would throw for 200. He would allow 223 hits in those 206 innings, which of course would be 17 more hits than innings pitched. This would end his 7-year streak of having less hits than innings pitched that year. He also threw 159 strikeouts, which would be 47 less strikeouts on the year. At the conclusion of the 2014 season, the Detroit Tigers would end up losing in the very first round. They ended up getting swept in the division series by the Orioles. And since 2014, the Detroit Tigers have not been to the playoffs as a team. But following the first season in which he would miss the Cy Young, or following the first season in which he would miss the All-Star vote, Justin Verlander would come back for his 10th season as a full-time starter with the Detroit Tigers. In his age 32 season in 2015, he would start all 20 of the games he played in a season where the Detroit Tigers would finish with a 74-87 record. In 2015, he would be on the disabled list because of a right tricep strain, and he would have to go through the the minor leagues in order to get it back. In the 20 games he played, he finished with a 5-8 record and a 3.38 ERA for a Tigers team that completely missed the playoffs. In the 133 games that he pitched, he would go on to allow 133 innings he pitched, he allowed 113 hits, which would be 20 less hits than innings pitched. Not to mention that he would also go on to finish with 113 strikeouts in those 133 innings as well, which is 20 less strikeouts than innings pitched as well. And at the end of that 2015 season, the Detroit Tigers would just fail to make that playoffs. Following 2015, this would lead into Verlander's 11th season with the Detroit Tigers, which would be his last full season with the team. In his age 33 season in 2016, he would start all 34 of the matchups he pitched in a season where the Detroit Tigers would finish with an 86-75 record. That would be the second best record in the AL Central, and that would be the last time to date that the Detroit Tigers have had a winning record. This was also the year where Michael Fulmer was named the Rookie of the Year. In that 2016 season, Verlander would go on to finish with a 16-9 record and a 3.04 ERA. His 3.04 ERA being the lowest it had been since 2012, where he was the runner-up. Although he would not be named an All-Star in 2016, he would be named the Cy Young Award runner-up, as he would fall second to Rick Porcello of the Boston Red Sox this year. Despite the Tigers not making the playoffs and Justin Verlander finishing with a 16-9 record, he would pitch 227 innings, which of course would be the ninth time in a 10-season stretch that he would pitch for at least 200 innings, which is, of course, very tough feat of consistency to undergo every single year. He would go on to allow 171 hits in those 227 innings, which is, of course, 56 less hits than innings pitched. He would also go on to lead the American League in strikeouts for what would be the fourth time in his career, the fourth time he had done so in Detroit. He had a 254 strikeouts in 227 innings pitched. That would be 27 more strikeouts in innings pitched. At least up until this moment, this will be the third time that he would have more strikeouts than innings pitched. And for a guy that consistently throws over 200, that's very impressive of him to do. His 254 strikeouts would be the sixth time that he would throw for at least 200 strikeouts in a season. It will be the third time he would throw for at least 250 strikeouts in a season as well. He would go on to lead the American League in walks/hits per innings pitched, at least in the American League, which is a tough league to do it in, considering they have to face designated hitters as compared to the National League. This would be the second time, of course, like I said, he would lead in that category. And even though he would not make an all-star team, his last full year in Detroit would go down as a very historic one. Following his 11th and final season with the Detroit Tigers, he would return to 2017, of course, starting that season as a Detroit Tiger and finishing it with the Houston Astros, as, of course, the Houston Astros were at that time trying to build a team that would win them the title. In the very first bits of the 2017 season, he would start 28 games for a Tigers team that would fall just outside the playoffs, but before the end of the season, he would get moved. He would go 5-0 for a Houston Astros team that would finish the 2017 season with a 101-61 record. This would be the first time that they had won 100 wins since 1998, so of course, this is a very big season for them. At the conclusion of the season in 2017, Verlander would not be named a All-Star. This would, of course, make it a 4-year drought in which he would not make an All-Star team. He would finish with a 15-8 record and a 3.36 ERA. He would pitch for 206 innings, making it the 10th season in an 11-year stretch in which he would pitch over 200 innings. In addition, in the one season that he was on the injured reserve. In those 206 innings he pitched, he allowed 170 hits. That is 36 less hits than innings pitched. He would strike out 219 batters, making it 13 more strikeouts than innings pitched. This would be the fourth time in his career he had more strikeouts than innings pitched. This would be the second year in a row he had at least 200 strikeouts, and this would be the seventh year that he had done so as well. Not to mention that even though he would not make the All-Star team, he would finish fifth in a Cy Young voting race that would see Corey Kluber of the Cleveland Indians take home the award. And at the end of this 2017 season, the Houston Astros would end up beating the Red Sox in the American League Division Series. They would end up beating the Yankees in 7 in the championship series, as Justin Verlander would be named the American League Championship Series MVP. And then the Astros would go on to win the World Series in 2017 with Justin Verlander just getting there, winning the very first franchise in their winning the very first title in their franchise's history, in their second appearance to the World Series, as this would be the very first time that Justin Verlander had won the World Series for himself, as the closest he had gotten before that was in the World Series. They had lost to the St. Louis Cardinals, and they lost to the Giants for reference. But following that 2017 season where he was finally a champion, this would lead into his age 35 season in 2018, where he would be named an All-Star for the 7th time in his career at that point. And what, of course, would go down as his 13th year as a starting pitcher in his first full season with the Houston Astros. In 2018, he would start all 34 of the matchups he played in a season where the Astros would finish with a 103-59 record. They had won 2 more games than they had the previous year, in which they had gone on to win the World Series. In that 103-win season, Justin Verlander would go on to finish with a 16-9 record, which would be pretty much on par with what he had been doing in the years prior. This would end his 4-year drought of not being named an All-Star. This would be the 7th time he was named. He finished with a 16-9 record alongside a 2.52 ERA. His 2.52 ERA, that would be the 3rd time as a full-time starter he would finish with an ERA below 3. He would pitch for 214 innings, making it the 11th year in a 12-year stretch that he would pitch at least 200 innings. He had 156 innings pitched, which, of course, would be 58 less hits than innings pitched, making it yet another season in which he had less hits than innings pitched. This, of course, would be the 3rd year in a row in which he had done so. And he would throw for 290 strikeouts. This would be the most strikeouts he would put together in a season. This is the last time to date and the 5th time in his career that he has led the American League in strikeouts, even though it's the 2nd most amount of strikeouts he's ever put together in a season. He would also go on to lead the American League in walks/hits per innings pitched, as it would be at .902. At that point, the lowest in his career. Not to mention that his strikeouts per win ratio would end up being, or strikeouts per walk ratio would be the lowest in the American League. It would be 7.84 the first time he would lead in that statistical category. At the end of the 2018 season, the Houston Astros would, of course, go right back to the playoffs. And once they made it right back to the playoffs, they would sweep the Indians in the first round of the American League Division Series before losing in the American League Championship Series to the Boston Red Sox, who ended up going all the way to the title and winning it. That would transition into Justin Verlander's 2nd full season with the Houston Astros in 2019, which would go down probably as yet another historically great season for him and might even contend with his 2011 season. So in 2019, in what would have been his 14th full season as a full-time starter in the American League and the major leagues, he would go on to start all 34 of the games he played for a Houston Astros team that finished with a 107-55 record. That is the best record that their team has ever put together in their franchise's history. This would go down as the 3rd year in a row they would finish with the best record in their division, and this would be the 3rd year in a row that they made the playoffs. And the streak, of course, starting when they won the World Series. In this 2019 season, in the season where Justin Verlander would lead the American League in starts for the 5th time in his career, he would lead the American League in wins for the 3rd time in his career as he finished with a 21-6 record. This would be the 2nd time in his career he finished with at least 20 wins on the year. And like I said, this is the last time to date he has led the American League in wins. Alongside his 21-6 record, he finished with a 2.58 ERA, making it the 4th year in his 14 years of pitching in which he finished with an ERA below 3. Finished with a 2.58. He would lead the American League in innings pitched as he had 223 innings pitched on the year. He would allow 137 hits. That's 86 less hits than innings pitched, which is the biggest deficit that he would create in his career. This would be yet another season, the 5th year in a row that he would have less hits than innings pitched. This would be the 12th season that he had done so in his first 14 years in the league. He would go on to strike out 300 batters. This would be the very first time he had done so. Not to mention that he would also throw his third no-hitter of his career. And even though he didn't lead the American League in strikeouts with 300, that's the most strikeouts he would ever put together in a season. This is the last time that he had thrown at least 200 strikeouts in a season as well. This is the 9th time that he has done so in his career. This is also the 5th time in his career that he's thrown at least 250 strikeouts in a year. And he would finish with the American League lead in walks/hits per innings pitched, as it was at .803, the lowest in a full season that he's ever been able to post. He would lead the American League in hits per 9 innings, as he only allowed 5.5 hits per 9 innings. This would be the second time he had led the league in that stat since 2011. And he would also lead the American League in strikeouts per walks for the second year in a row. In 2019, he would be named an All-Star for the most recent time he has in his career, which is the 8th time. He would be 11th in an MVP voting race that would see him lose to Mike Trout. However, he would go on to win the American League Cy Young over Garrett Cole, who was on his own team for the year. Following his second Cy Young season, in which he proved that his lone Cy Young season wasn't a fluke. The Houston Astros would end up beating the Tampa Bay Rays in the American League Division Series. They would end up beating the Yankees in 6 in the championship series before losing in 7 to the Washington Nationals. That would, of course, be the season in which the Nationals had won their very first title, with Dave Martinez being their manager. But of course, this was the second to last time that the Astros would make the World Series. This would be the last time that Justin Verlander would make an appearance as an All-Star in the World Series. And even since, he's only played 1 game since that 2019 season, which was 2020. He went 1-0 as he pitched, 6 innings. As he had a 3 ERA, he only allowed 2 runs in the 6 innings that he pitched, just to get a sense of how well he was playing. And this is, of course, for a Houston Astros team that went on to that went on to lose in the American League Championship Series after playing in an expanded playoffs due to coronavirus. But it even has us skipping through this 2021 season, which leads us to where we are now, where I do believe that my GOAT profile is very similar. It might even be the same video as it is for last year. But of course, I want to take this time to lead up to where we are now, as Justin Verlander is now turning 39. I do hope that between this year and next year, he does have a good amount of production to put up, because he has been hurt over all this time. But I do implore that if he does play, I would recommend watching him. He's wearing number 35 for the Houston Astros. And with this said, I want to thank the Pro Baseball Reference website, ESPN, and MLB for giving me all the facts and figures that I need. Once all of today's exhibitions, matchups, and Olympic events are done, I'm going to come back tomorrow on Monday, February 21st for another episode of The Elite. So until then, I want to thank everyone for listening. I hope all is well, and I'll catch you with another episode tomorrow. And hopefully I'll have a lot more to say about Justin Verlander by the time he turns 40. Thanks for listening. I hope all is well, and I still think Justin Verlander is one of the greatest pitchers to ever play this game. And hopefully we'll see how long he continues to play that well. Thanks for listening. I hope all is well, and peace out. Thanks for listening to my piece.